Oh, welcome, welcome. This is, I guess, part two to today's stream. If you stopped by or caught up with me today, I really appreciate you popping in. If not, that's totally okay too. So this portion, someone that I know is looking to just understand mixing in a deeper sense. Now, I am no professional. Before we even get there, I'm just gonna warn you right now. I'm not necessarily teaching you how to do this the right way at all, because I don't know what the right way to do it is. So, heads up on that. But with that in mind, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do. So, I don't even know if this video will stay up, given the fact that it's a song that I don't have. It's copyrighted material, to be frank. But let's just start, and we'll see where we can go. So we've got a lot of stuff going on here. Let's take a listen to begin with to where we're coming from. Jeez, what is that? Oh my god, that is wild. Okay, so apparently I can't use track 10, and I understand why not. Track 10 is hilarious. That's crazy. Okay. Okay. Right away, this sounds extremely crushed. If we were to take this into something where we can take a look at the dynamic range real quick. Where are you? So, we're coasting kind of around. I don't know, there's good range here. Holy smokes, how do you mix that? Okay, what a challenge. Okay, to start, let's take a look at our kicks. We got two different kicks. It looks like right foot and left foot. So, I think I'm gonna bus some. Call it the kick bus, because I'm gonna use this a lot. I'm hoping that the kick bus won't be like a mess. I guess we'll see. Yeah, not bad. Oh my goodness. You know, I bit off too much, way more than I could chew. How do you mix this kind of music? Holy smokes. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, I need that kick louder. Like, I know a lot of people don't care that much, but for me that kick is just, it's way buried in the mix, and I want to hear a pump from my kick. Now, the only issue I have is that if I do that, it'll sound like this. Oh, that's not so bad. Is this a really high-end kick? Oh, wow. It's all high-end. Ooh. Metal is something special. Okay. Alright, see, I'm getting a lot more presence out of my kick already. That's pretty good. I would even clip it, maybe, because as you see, I really like clipping in my mixing, so let's see. Oh my goodness. Now we got some machine gun kicks. I like that. Alright. Okay, so this snare. You see the kick is in the snare. Do you see that? We do not want that at all. So what this is telling me is this is a live recording. It's clear they did a pretty good job of masking, but we got to do the full final version of the masking here. So that's where we pull out our EQ. Masking is an extremely important part of mixing. What you do is you look at which frequencies you want your instrument to inhabit. So right now, we're talking about a snare. You see, every time the snare hits, what happens? Just these frequencies move. Everything else doesn't really move at all. And the reason for that is because the mic is picking up every sort of thing that should not be picked up to begin with. It's actually maybe not ideal the way that it has been recorded, but I mean, this is, you know, this is how it is. This is what happens when you record live, right? You gotta, in the mixing step now, you have to be able to isolate. So I'm getting my kick out of there. I just want my snare, right? But I don't want to lose any texture of my snare. So it's looking like right around the 200 frequency range I can cut at. Now, it's looking like this is the pocket where my snare's sitting. And up here is obviously the high end of the snare, but it's just buried in that. Absolutely buried in the high end on the hats there. Let me just take a listen. Wow. Okay, so this entire recording is gonna need to be masked quite heavily. So let's just start with the kick again. See, I don't mind too much how the kick sounds. Sounds about right to me. Maybe if anything, I'll cut the low and some of the highs, because what you can do that's really okay. Light boost. What you can do that's really helpful. High cuts. Sorry, I'm doing a lot at once. Is you fill those frequencies with. Man. Okay, so I think the question is, which instrument do you want to carry that high end with? Because these hats are gonna carry throughout. I do not have something to isolate those hats out. There are ways to do it. It sounds like they're a little further away from the mic, so what I could try, we'll see how well this works. I'm gonna try cutting the high end, but only on the stereo. So to do that, we're gonna do side. There we go. So it is mono though. It is mono, so that's not gonna help me out. Even though it's far away. The only thing we can do in a circumstance like this is just accept the fact that we're gonna lose some of the information here. What I would like to do instead is just cut out there, these frequencies right here. See, that's where the cymbal is sitting, so I can try to kind of pull away from that frequency range a little bit, and I'm hoping not to impede too much on the actual texture of the drum. There's also something else you can do here that I'm not familiar with, but you can actually make it dynamic. Make dynamic, let's see. Dynamic range. I've never done this whole dynamic thing, so let's just figure it out together. Okay. So that's pulling it up whenever it hits. This is pulling it up whenever it hits. Okay, so I need it to go negative, alright? So now whenever it's hitting, it should be going down now. Okay, well, I don't need that. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay, sweet. So that's a very useful tool right here, because what's happening, that means whenever signal is processed, we're actually then applying the EQ, right? You can imagine where that can be a very powerful tool. Now, what it sounds like here though, if you just listen to it, it's sounding more like a compressed thing. So actually for me, I probably would go this direction here. Here, let's see. Where instead of it coming up when the kick happens, now we're having it pull away. We're pulling away the high frequencies whenever there is no kick. And that way, we can try to muffle that unideal, unnecessary cymbal. So this is actually, I just discovered this, and this is what we're going to use for this entire thing here, because that's really the key. So, nice. Alright. Now don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's a billion ways that are better than this to do this. Alright, so there's our kick, finally mixed. Now we gotta do the same exact thing with the snare. So, we're gonna do that, make dynamic, and then, so we're talking about, we want it to be so that whenever the snare hits, that's when it boosts. You see here? So now all I'm trying to do right now, because as you can see, as it was recorded, that cymbal is it's gonna just carry through for every single one of these mics. So we need to remove that cymbal. There's a lot of ways. You can even use a dehisser. I bet that would work as well. I don't know. I imagine so. But in this case, this way we're making it so that only when the snare hits are we really hearing. I want it that bright. That's about bright enough. Now, I'm not hearing it in mix either, so let's just take a listen. Okay, so this definitely needs to clip. And what I should have done to start with, this was a very silly move from my part, but this all should be way quieter. How am I going to find dynamic range if there's none to begin with, right? Now, as for the Maximus, okay, perfect. Alright, so what we're going to do, we're going to turn up each instrument until we feel like it's at the right place. So, right now I feel like my kick is it's sitting kind of right in the pocket that I wanted in. Maybe it's feeling a little bit too dynamic, so I'm gonna actually maybe pull away some of the lows too. Yeah, that's a little better. You don't want the kick to overpower the mix, right? Alright, that's better. Now these toms look like they're not doing much in this intro bit, so let's just turn them down for now. What's this hat doing? So this hat is the culprit. So with this hat, all you need to do, first obviously you hear it's also picking up the snare. Let's mute it out again, solo it out. So it's picking up the snare, there it is, in that mic. So we don't want that at all. In fact, the hats really only sit kind of up here anyway. So that's how easy it is to do that. Now the other thing too, this hat it's mono, but we want it in the stereo space. This is a hat. It shouldn't be sitting dead center. So what people usually do, they'll pan it. And what I like to do is I like to balance that pan. So I have my hats kind of leaning right now. But see, you can't even hear them because all these, they got picked up in every single recording. You see? So that's a bit of the trouble here. Let's see. This is our main culprit, is the snare right now. So what I'm going to do actually, I'm going to do that exact stereo thing I just told you about. We're going to clip this one so that it can stand up against the snare mic. And now you're hearing it's coming from the left and the right, right? See, that's the key here. Now, the issue with this is obviously that's putting my snare in my left ear. So we don't want it to be, you know, it's all got to be subtle. That's the key here. That's what we're aiming for. You shouldn't be able to even hear what I'm doing. So what is this one? Okay, so this is the right and left, these are the right and left hat channels. Or maybe it's another open hat on the right and left. I don't know. I'm not a drummer. But to me, it's looking like these guys are going to just hard pan left and right. Seems good to me now. They both just need their snare taken out. So what I'm going to do, yeah, I'll just EQ them out. I was thinking of just bussing them all together because that's how you're supposed to professionally do this. This should all be bussed. But I like having the ability. What ear is this? My left ear? Because I can't hear it at all right now. See, anytime you have an instrument that you can't hear, that's a problem, right? Because then why is it even in the mix to begin with? So what we're doing right now, it's such a monotonous process, but you really want to make sure that you're cleaning up all of these overlapping frequencies wherever you can in order to make room for the remaining frequencies, of course. I'm okay with that. So here's our bass. Now, something very interesting about music is, check this out. This bass is not operating, well, it's operating in the bass frequencies, but these are the high bass frequencies. These are the frequencies that normally my piano would sit in, not my bass. My bass normally sits down here. And the reason that they're up here instead is because, of course, this is where we're hearing. It's harder to hear in this frequency range. But with that in mind, I actually do not think this bass is carrying enough bass. So it's a personal preference situation. I'm going to try to boost it without overdoing it. And whenever you're boosting like this, you always got to be very careful as well. You don't need a lot of these frequencies. So you have no reason to boost unless you can hear the difference. That's the key here. Can you hear what you're doing? If you're just doing it because some numbers tell you that they're the right numbers, you might be doing the wrong thing. So it's looking like I can cut right about here. Because see, as soon as I pull any higher, I can start hearing it. But any lower, I can't hear this at all. I can't hear any of these frequencies. I can only hear up to right about here, 76. So that's what we'll go with. Other than that, it's kind of it's fine. So let's bring all of the instruments we've got so far just to see what's going on here. Yeah, so far the mix is pretty balanced. Now it is very flat, so we will work on that. But everything's sitting in the right location. My snare could be a little louder. Let's see if I can do something to boost that snare a bit. See, the part of the snare I want to boost is the part that I can't really boost because it's currently being covered by those hats. So I'm gonna try my best. Cool, that was nice. Yeah, that's a bit better. And now we can center it a little more too, because the snare is currently the only thing sitting in the wrong place. Let's keep going. So this is a bass cabinet. So this is our FX channel on the bass. Now, usually when we're talking an FX channel, don't even think twice about it. Usually that means we're gonna cut, because we already have the clean signal, so we don't need a lot of that low end. I always double check, I listen out, but look, it's already been cut at around 50. And the reason for it is that's where the audible sounds are. So let's keep that 50 hertz cut. I think that's okay. Now, I kind of want a little bit more of that range, but I need to hear the guitars first to understand. Yeah, so we actually don't want a bass inhabiting this frequency range because it's definitely blocking out our guitars. So I'm just gonna really create quite a substantial V there. Keep my stuff moving. Now, as you see, I haven't even gotten to the compression stuff yet, right? This is a longer process than just slapping a couple of FX on and then running away, right? So there's a guitar left and right, so I will honor that. Yeah, that was the right move, okay. See how much space you get in doing that? And now, this is my left ear, so I'm listening out in my left ear right now, just trying to see which frequencies are necessary here. And it's looking like I can do probably on 100 hertz cut. You'll see that's kind of a common one. And I think that the aim, ooh, hey, this is beautiful. Why can't I hear my kick? One of the kicks is just so quiet during this section. So this is where I would get, sorry about that sound by the way, this is where I would get, probably our best move is some compression on the kick. Maybe, like, it looks like I've already done the kick. I've done everything I could on this one. So, because once this vocal comes in, that kick ducks. Where's our vocal? Yeah. See, as soon as that vocal comes in, our kick kind of loses a lot of its presence. It looks like right foot is where the majority of the song is played. Right foot is our main foot, so I'm gonna turn right foot up a little bit more. That's better, yeah. Okay, let's see again. Because now on this part, it won't be balanced anymore. Yeah, see, now the kick is too loud on this part. So what you gotta do, painstaking process, you gotta automate this stuff. You pull out an automation clip here. Where we at? So we said that the kick needed to be turned up around, right here. But before this section, we still want it lower. So let's see. Right. See, it's all about ear. You're just looking for, you know, what sounds right. So here I started off with a kick, had to turn it down quite a bit, just, you know, just at the intro. But then once again, once the vocal comes in, you notice the kick, it loses its presence to make room for the vocal, right? So I'm gonna do both. I'm gonna make room for the vocal while still maintaining that kick. See, the kick is in the low frequency range, so generally speaking, it should actually sit in the front. I know that sounds non-contemporary, but I think a lot of people, if you listen out, you can hear it. Anyway, I bet that... because it's still too much high end, so I'm gonna pull this one down. What is this instrument that's making that sound? There's like a cymbal in there, but I don't know. I guess it's these two here, plus this. Okay, well I'll just turn them down, because I feel like the cymbals are just too loud. Ooh, and now the kick is way the hell too loud by a huge margin. You see, I hope you don't mind me using your name here. I hope that's okay with you, Rachel. But you were definitely mixing in a way that emphasizes that guitar. What we're looking for is actually the opposite of that. Your guitar is your rhythm instrument. It sits the farthest back in the mix, typically. Unless we're talking about a lead instrument, unless we're talking about this kind of section here where our guitar is now taking up that space. For the most part, you need to leave that room. So now, during this type of section here, I now have to remix each of these faders in order to suit this sound, because now we're looking at turning up the guitars and the bass, and we're using different percussion entirely now, right? So you are now listening out for the percussion, like, which instrument? This one, the snare. So like for me now, that snare needs another clip. Like I would clip that snare, you know, like that amount, just to get me back on track with that instrument. And so you're gonna do that for each individual instrument. We're trying to make it, you know, our goal in mixing is to increase the clarity for the listener while maintaining as much of that dynamic range that we intended for. Now, another less known part of that mixing process is that panning. It's the most important thing though, because your high frequencies should not be sitting centered. I mean, no, there's no right or wrong in any of this, but in a general sense, those frequencies just take up more of the sonic spectrum space, right? So you wanna be few and far between. You want to use those only when they're necessary. And here we have, as we said, we also had all the feedback, all those overlapping frequencies just from the way that it was recorded with the drums. So in that case, you still needed to EQ that out. We went for a dynamic EQ. I thought that was a good move. Now notice that I didn't compress at all here. I didn't feel that there was too much need for compression. This is already glued very well, and this genre of music, that is how it is. So, you know, you'll find in a genre like, I don't know, hip-hop or dance music, you know, compression's big. This is already compressed as hell. Like, what are these waveforms, right? There's always room for more compression, don't get me wrong. But in this case, I'm feeling we want more transparency in a place like clipping, where we're still maintaining that dynamic range, because there's already no dynamic range to begin with. This bass cabinet is one continuous waveform, you know? Our only dynamic range comes from these drums, and that's why I was trying to emphasize the drums, because, you know, we're looking at dynamic range. We're trying to keep the listener engaged. In order to do that, you have to try to keep it, the sound has to be what I would call bouncy. You want to have those louder instruments, you know, substantially louder than the quieter ones. So I really hope this helped. I know I didn't get through the entire thing, but I'm realizing just how colossal this project would be. There's a lot of automation involved. Like, look, this was just the first section. So I would probably be automating this section. Oh, let me do this better. I'd probably be automating like this section here, followed by this section up to about here. And then once again, that's where we went into the breakdown. So in the breakdown now, you have to do a whole new mix, completely new mix. Generally, you don't have to do anything, but generally, like in this instance, there's just so much new stuff going on that you want to rebalance, and then here, this entire section now, once the drums are in, you would have to remix it again, because you're trying to balance against the loudest instrument. You're always trying to balance against the loudest instrument, so that would now enter a new section, and see, we don't need to mess with the panning too much, we don't need to mess with the fundamental faders too much, but we do still need to make sure everything is within its pocket, its frequency range, and its location. It's not just about the sonic spectrum, it's not about just your location in the frequency spectrum, but it's also about your location, your position in space. You know, you want your singer, bass, drums all to be dead center, right at the front, but then you want your rhythm stuff, hats, guitars, pianos, to sit much further away from the listener, because those instruments do not fundamentally have an impact the way that a vocal will or a kick will. You know, if a guitar goes from the major to the minor chord, that can totally change the feeling of the song. That much is true. But it's not going to change nearly as much as a bass going from that major third, going from like, let me play it right here for you. So if a bass is going from this kind of note, right? Just playing a major, you know, this is just a major chord, and then you're going to hear that minor much more clearly in a bass, because we're talking about just individual notes, right? Anyway, this was a very, very general overview. There's so many concepts, so feel free to reach out. I'm so happy to take this more into sort of a personal direction, because, you know, we could go on for days about different ways that you can sort of tweak your sound and get it better. What I found in yours was there was no masking. You know, what's going on, what's most important for you? I think two takeaways. The two biggest takeaways are dynamic range, because, you know, in your mix, I didn't hear much dynamic range. And then additionally, this low, okay, so let me pull up my bass. So even my bass, pull up both my basses, even all of my basses and my kicks, check this out. Everything here, they all are cutting. I have my bass cabinet cutting at 50 hertz. That's fair. That's in the bass frequencies. I have my kick cutting at 20, so even my kick is cutting. Now, it's not a huge deal. You don't need to cut. But you want to preserve as much of the frequency range as you can, and if these kicks are not audible to begin with, you can remove that frequency. So this is exactly what we're doing with the bass as well. And so now we're freeing up that frequency range just for the kick alone. No other frequencies, none of my other instruments should be sitting in that frequency range, and very much is the same, let's say, for our guitars, right? We said our guitars are sitting in this sort of middle frequency range, and so what did we do? We actually created a V cut, right? A V cut in what was it, in one of our basses, I think? Yeah, bass cabinet? Anyway, we did a V cut. There it is. There's our beautiful V cut in our cabinet, because we saw the cabinet is actually occupying all of the frequency space of the guitar, right? So here's the cabinet. Let me turn off my EQ. There's my cabinet. And now these are all sitting in that same place, right? So what I can do to get my guitars no longer overlapping in frequencies is by pulling down those, you know, that 500 frequency range. This is a common thing people do with guitars anyway. Ultimately, the hardest thing with this genre of music is the fact that each instrument looks like this. This is not normal for an instrument to take up the entire frequency range, but additionally, it gives you a lot of cool opportunities, and that's why the genre is so popular. I mean, not the only reason why, but, you know, there's a reason why people gravitate toward a sound where you're really, you know, abrasive. And so we're not trying to take away from the texture of anything in what we're doing, right? We want to maintain the identity of what we're working with, but we can still understand, like, look at this. I just pulled down these middle frequencies to -30. This is a huge amount I'm pulling down by. Let me see. Maybe I can even go more. Hold on. Let's see. Look, now we're talking 200% gain scale, so there's a negative 60 decibels. You can't even hear it. Look at that. I just cut out all of those frequencies and you can't even hear the difference. Do you understand? That gives you so much more room then for other instruments to fit in that space. But you can't even hear the difference. See, that's the job of a mixer. You have to be able to pick up on that stuff. And no, don't get me wrong, I can definitely hear the difference. I think we can all actually hear what's going on there. But the general point is that you're looking for all of those little nuance pockets where you can maintain and gain a little bit in the, not just in loudness, but also in, whatever you're after. You're trying to carve pockets for each instrument. So I'm hoping that this has helped kind of create an overview of what you're looking for. Once again, any questions, any concerns, please let me know. Otherwise, thanks so much for reaching out. I hope you guys have a